34b, and we learned the Mishnah. We had Rabbi Shmuel's opinion. We had Reb Tarfon's opinion, Rabbi Akiva's opinion about how many hadassim and how many aravos, and Rabbi Shmuel initially said you need 3 hadassim, and however, it was a little vague. He said 2 of them could be cut off and 1 not. Question is what that meant, or how could that be? I shouldn't say vague. It's complicated to understand the reasoning. And the Gemara said that it was chazar by. And again, chazar by, maybe the meaning of the Gemara, when the Gemara says chazar by, that's vague, because there are different interpretations what he retracted from. But ultimately, Rabbi Shmuel says he was chazar by, he retracted from some opinion. Now, we mentioned yesterday Rashi's opinion, that what he retracted from was that you need 3. Really, all you need is 1. According to Rabbi Shmuel, all you need is 1 hadas that is kosher. Now, that's the way Rashi learned it. There are other interpretations. Maybe we'll get to them soon. Now, Reb Tarfon held that you need 3, but they could all be cut off. Even if they're all cut off, it's still kosher. It's not a problem. And interestingly, Rashi says the reason why Reb Tarfon holds that way. Rashi says that what does Rashi say? Rashi says in the Mishnah, he says the loy by hadar bahadas. You don't need hadar by a hadas. So that's the understanding that Rashi has, that that even though the pasuk says hadar, creates hadar, kapis tvarim, anafetz avos, arvei nachal. So it says hadar there. But the way Rashi is learning, the understanding is that hadar doesn't go on the future cases. It might go on. It goes on pre-eitz hadar on esrog, and maybe it also goes on lulav because it's right next to it. But then the other 2 cases are afterwards, so maybe it doesn't go on them. And that, at least that's the way the Meiri explains Rashi. Such a interpretation that in other words, the word hadar doesn't have to be beautiful. So if the top is cut off, it's not a problem. Now, what about yavesh? If it's dried out, it's also not hadar. So does Rashi, according to Reb Tarfon, the way Reb Tarfon is learning, so you don't need, so it could also be dried out? In other words, how far do you take that? It doesn't say hadar. It doesn't have to be beautiful. What about if it's dried out? Is that also going to be kosher? I mean, that's not going to fit with the other mishnayos that we have, that hadas can't be dried out. So how does that? How is he gonna learn that? If you look back in the Mishnah 32b, so hadas and gozel yavesh is possible. Tarfon, what was Reb Tarfon really hold? So they explain that yavesh is a different problem. If it's dried out, it's like it's not there, and that would be a different problem than hadar. It's not. It's like it's missing. You don't have a full hadas, but kichatama, complete hadas. But here, if it's not, the top is cut off. You could also say you don't have a complete one, but if it's only the top that's cut off, that would not be a problem, because that would be an issue of hadar, and it's not. It'd be an issue that it's not hadar, it's not beautiful. That's not a problem. Now there's another more understandable reason, I think, than the way Rashi learns. The common understanding that if the top is cut off, it's still kosher, is because if you look at a hadas, it has 3 leaves, and those leaves surround the branch completely, that you hardly see the branch. And so if the top is cut off, you don't see that. And because of that, it makes it that it's not a problem when it's cut off, because the leaves cover it over. So it's not visible. Because it's not visible, kosher. There is another interpretation mentioned that only the lulav is really a problem when it's cut off, but the others are not a problem because the lulav sticks up much higher and it's much more recognizable. So there is such an interpretation. But again, I think the main interpretation that is commonly understood is that the fact that it's covered over with the leaves. That's the reason why it's kosher. Okay. There is another interpretation, the Ravid, a little different than the way we've learned the whole time. The way the Ravid wants to learn is that if you look in this Mishnah, the Mishnah says Shnayim Ketumim, Shloshtan Ketumim. It uses this plural Ketumim. Ve'echad Enoi Kotum. And the Ravid says it doesn't use the word niktam. It uses the word kotum. The previous Mishnah, when we talk about hadas, niktam roisha, use the word niktam. It was cut off. Here we use the word kotum. So the Ravid wants to say, you see, from the difference in the language, there must be a different meaning of these two Mishnayos. And we can't say that it means the same thing. So the previous Mishnah meant that niktam roisha, that the top was clipped off. Here, when it says kotum, the Ravid says, I have a whole different meaning. That a lot of times the hadas has little branches.
Why don't you do it?
Little branches that branch off from the hadassim, from the myrtle. It has little twigs that come out. So he says that if those twigs are cut off, according to Rabbi Yishmael, two of them could be cut off. We're not talking about the top. We're talking about the twigs that are coming out of that's what we're talking about, kitumim and kotum. And so according to the Ravid, you have a whole different interpretation of this Mishnah. That's not talking about the top being cut off. It's talking about those twigs being cut off. And according to Reb Tarfon, they could all be. You could cut them all off, even if because it's still hadar, it's still beautiful, even if they're cut off. And now, so that's the way the Ravid seems to wanna learn it. Interesting. But anyway, that's not the typical way. If you open the Mishnah and Gemara, you're not going to learn it that way. But the Ravid is, the Ravid's interpretation. It's interesting how he comes up with it. He says the word ketumim has to be different. He also, it seems like he wants to answer why it's how could we have a previous Mishnah that seems that it says Niktam Roisha is puzzle, and here we say there seems to be a lot of opinions that it's kosher. It makes sense that maybe this is talking about something different. So he has an interesting interesting interpretation. He says about this interpretation, he says that Ruach HaKodesh came to our base medrash, this divine spirit that came up with this interpretation. Anyway, but that's the way the Ravid learns. Okay, so we've got some different interpretations about the meaning of kotum, and but the simple understand there are different reasons why kotum is going to be kosher according to Reb Tarfon. And Rabbi Akiva comes up with another interesting opinion that everything all you need is one. Everything is just one, and the lulav one, they're all just one. You don't need a few of each. You just take one of each, and you are fulfilling the mitzvah as as obligated. And they bring down that according to Rabbi Akiva, what does he do with the word arvei? Arvei nachal, which sounds like plural. What would Rabbi Akiva do? What do you think? What does Rabbi Akiva do with the fact that it says plural? He says all you need is one. Arvei. It's plural. Anyone have any thoughts on that? How could Rabbi Akiva say you just need one if it says arvei plural? Yes, Jeffrey.
So then he would be going by the interpretation that there are different kinds of the aravos, the different species that you could use, and some of them do have the edges serrated, and some of them don't have.
Or I don't know if maybe the simple way of saying what you said would be that not only when it grows by a stream, but even the aravais that grow between the mountains or on the fields, they're also going to be kosher. That would be one interpretation, right? One way of learning it. And the other way it could be learning is the plural, arvei nachal, is that not just do you need aravais for the lulav, but arvei, there's also going to be another ritual to do with the aravais, with the willows, and that's going to be in the Beis Hamikdash. So that would be the other, that would be another way how he could learn it. Okay, so then the Gemara said that we brought a brisa. Brisa says creates hadar echod, kapos tamarim echod. Now, how does it creates? Because it says pre, it means one. Kapois, it sounds like kapas. It doesn't have the vav. It means one. Anafetz avos, he says you need three. And we spoke about yesterday that it seems surprising that because there's three words that you're gonna say it means three, but you use those words. Taisus' question, you use those words for other things. So how could you say it means? How could you say it means three? But in any event, that's how he learns. He learns that it means three. And arvei nachal in plural, that it means two. Then comes the question, and then comes the surprising law of his, the questionable law of his, which the Gemara will deal with, and that is, he says, even if two are cut, but one isn't, it's going to be kosher. And we'll see in the Gemara soon what that means. Reb Tarfon said that you need three, but they could all be cut. And again, we learned the reasons for that. Why could they be cut? Either he holds you don't need to have it hadar, you don't need to have it beautiful, or because the hadassim that are, when they're cut on the top, it's not visible. You don't see them because the leaves cover them over, or because there was another interpretation that the lulav is the main thing that when it's cut, it's visible. The others are not visible when they're cut. And then we had the Ravid's interpretation that the ones on the side, the branches that come, the little twigs that grow out of it, those are cut. It's not a problem because it's still hadar, it's still beautiful. So that's why it's kosher. Anyway, so we have all these 4 or 5 interpretations why it's going to be kosher. And then we have Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva had said that you need 1, 1, 1, 1, just like it's a lulav, one esrog. So it's also hadas and arava are also all one. It's interesting how he says that, just like the esrog, the kashem. What was the term in the Mishnah? Kashem shalulav echad esrog echad. Just like the lulav is one, esrog is one. Also, hadas is one, and arav is one. What's the meaning of that kashem? The same way that the lulav is you need one and the esrog is one. The same way. Interesting that he says it in that style, and in the Brisa also it uses the same style. Kashem shalulav echad be'asrog echad kach hadas achas echad be'arava achas. Just interesting that he uses that terminology. He could just say that the law is that hadas is one, arava is one. It seems like he's learning it from the lulav and from the esrog, like those are the source.
In other words, maybe the list might imply that the first one's the most important. So if you only need one of the most important, of them, then only one is necessary for all of them.
Say that one more time. That what?
Maybe because he considers the list to be in an order from most important to least important.
Uh-huh. So if the
if
most
you
important
do that, so the most important only has one, so it's not necessary for the other ones to have more.
Right. Although I would say maybe the opposite. If the most important, maybe that only needs one because it's it fulfills what it needs. This is the main thing. The others you have they almost
subordinate in some way.
Maybe they need to have a few to reach
to help them out.
to help them out exactly. Yeah. But anyway, there is one of the commentaries does say that the lulav is really where Rabbi Akiva learns everything from, because the lulav says kapas. That's the source of them all. Once you're learning kapas by the lulav, so then you learn that the esrog is the same thing as the lulav. It says it right next to it. And once you learn that the lulav teaches on one of the species, it teaches all of the species because they're all learned from each other. So in other words,
I mean, then if you do that, then I could see also another explanation. That's because if you're playing with the spellings and the syllables, so ka alone means a comparison.
That's a little play on the word, right? All right, cute. So it seems the way, according to that interpretation, the lulav is the main one that we know it means one because it says it missing the vav. I guess that's like the main source. It's missing a vav. It must be teaching us something that is one. It's not plural. And then you automatically learn esrog from it because it's written right next to it. Priye tzadar kapais tamarim. And once you learn those two, so you're going to learn the others as well. Why do you learn? I mean, the truth is, the one after it is also maybe, well, you learn the one before it from it more than the one after it from it. Maybe, why is he saying, in other words, why is he more convinced about an esrog than the others? It's a little hard to understand. I mean, everyone seems to agree that an esrog is one, but the question is why? If the source is lulav, so anyway, that's one interpretation. I'm not sure I understand that interpretation so well because really, if that was the case, I think it should say kashem shalulav echad kach esrog hadas in arav echad. You should put the word kach a little earlier.
If you want to go further than that, there's another fact about the context. There's only one place in the Torah that mentions these types of plants, and it put it together with sukkahs. So if you understand another theme of the whole book of Torah's Kohanim, everything is in 4s and 8s. Those are the important numbers for almost every single mitzvah. Includes this concept. It takes a while to explain it, but you can. I could show you 5, 6 different 8s that there are there and 4s that are there.
Is this your own finding, or you saw this written about?
I didn't see it. I was a Torah reader for a long time, and after a while, you get to be like sitting with your brothers and thinking about what all the words mean. Okay.
No, so I'm saying you saw this yourself, or you?
Yes,
you
yes. But other people, I believe other people might make a reference to it. But there's something I taught my children. There's something very significant, I think, about in that the whole book is organized that way. Because you would say other places talk about 40 a lot, or talk about the number 7 a lot. If you add up the minim, the pieces, so you could say there's only 4 kinds, and it's exactly the same as the 4 sons of Aaron, for example, etc. And they're all different, you know. some survive, some don't survive. There's 2 and 2, etc. And there are the gems that each row, right, whatever you want to call it, right. Right. And then when you count the holidays,
the 4 rows.
You count the holidays, they each have a completion, which is this from 7, it's added. So if you look at that, where the Shavuos then is the completion of Pesach, so it has 7 weeks, and the last day after the 7 weeks is the 8th of the last sequence, and that is, and that's the 8th. Okay, so each sequence is the same way, right? With Sukkah.
I hear you. So basically, what you're saying is that Rabbi Akiva holds you need ultimately 4. Because the 4 is one of the numbers. Okay.
It's a sod of the book of Torah's Kohen.
There's some secret to 4. Anyway, bottom line, very nice, very impressive, Jeffrey. I liked your finding, very interesting. Okay, so but I just want to say there is one other interpretation here that learns not from lulav, because it says kapas, but more from the esrog. The esrog is really the source. That the same way the esrog, the lulav and the esrog, and really it's all from the esrog, the same way that the esrog needs to be 1, because it says pre lashon yachid, not peiros, but pre Yitzchok. And so the same thing would apply to the lulav, because the lulav and the esrog are written right next to each other, and so the esrog and the lulav are once you have the esrog, and that teaches on the lulav, so therefore it teaches really on all the others. So that would be why it says Shem Shalulav Echad is learned from esrog Echad. So also Hadas and Arava are also learned to be 1. So that's another. In other words, these 2 interpretations that I'm sharing with you, one is that the source of them all is the lulav. The other one is the source of them all is really the esrog. Which one is the main? But maybe you could say both. Maybe you could say both interpretations are really right. It's because both of those are more hinted to clearly that it's 1. Kapas hints to the fact that it's 1, and so maybe you could combine these 2 interpretations. That really it's from both lulav and esrog, and that's why he says it. Those give an implication that it's 1. Kapas and pri both have an implication. The others don't say clearly if it's plural. It actually maybe sounds more plural, but these sound very similar. So he learns that these these 2 are similar. Anafetz avois doesn't say it's 1. Arvei nachal does give an implication like maybe it's plural, but because these 2 are clear that they imply 1, so he learns that they all have to be 1. Maybe these are the source. Okay. Anyway, then continuing in the Gemara. So Rabbi Eliezer says, what does Rabbi Eliezer say? That you might think that the esrog should be bound together with the others, but it doesn't have a vav. Because it doesn't have the letter vav, the Gemara says it means that that's on its own, and the other species are on their own. And how do you know the 4 are necessities? You need all 4 to fulfill the mitzvah, and if you're missing 1, you don't fulfill the mitzvah. So on that, it says you need lakicha tama. It has to be all 4. Less than that is worthless. Now, this is a topic of discussion. Are you allowed to shake the lulav each species separately? Our Gemara talks about shaking the lulav, esrog, and hadas in one binding, and the esrog is separate. Doesn't have to. It's not bound together with them. So, and we also mentioned that you need them all. Do they all need to be together at the same time when you wave it, or is it good enough if it's waved separately? And I must say that you all might think, well, this is not necessary, not really practical. I've actually come across situations where it is very practical. I do a lot of shaking the lulavs in nursing homes, And a lot of times, one of their hands is like paralyzed or very weak. They can't hold this species. They can't hold the lulav. They can't.
Right.
Would you be able to? The question would be, maybe they could pick up the lulav with their hand that they can use, say the bracha, shake it, and then put it down, pick up the esrog and shake it. And would that be fulfilling the mitzvah? Would that fulfill the mitzvah of doing the arba minim? So, in a certain sense, the other question also is, what happens if they hold the lulav on one in their right hand with the other myrtle and the myrtles and the willows, and then in their left hand they hold the esrog and they don't put it together? Is that good enough? Because we said here that it doesn't have to be bound together. And we also say that they're ma'akev. They are necessary for each other. But what does that mean that you need them all? Do you need them all at the same moment? Do you need them in being held together at the same time? In other words, do they have to be shaken together, touching each other? Do they have to be being held together in not touching each other? Or could you do one after another? And here you have a big topic of discussion, because the Gemara is a little vague what it means that they're ma'akev each other. You need to have all four. Yeah, I'm going to have all four. Do I need to do it at the same time? I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4. Or can I could maybe do my lulav, then the hadassim, then the aravais, then the answer. So here you have a taisvis over here. Lakicha Tami brings the halachis gedolos, that he says, don't think that you need to hold them up bahade hadodi together. If you do each one alone, shaper dummy, it's good enough, because we hold that lulav doesn't need eged, lulav doesn't need to be bound together. This is the taisvis on the side of Shetei Lakicha Tam. In the middle of it, he brings this halachis gedolos, that it's good enough. You could do each one alone. The kaima lulav doesn't need eged. And Taisva says, davar tema, this is a wonder to say such a thing, because it's one mitzvah. How could you do it one after another if it's one mitzvah? And the way Rabbeinu Tam understands it is that you don't need to tie them together. They don't need to, but according to Rabbi Yehuda, we learned that you do need to tie them together, but we don't hold that way. But nevertheless, their ma'akev means you need to have them all. So it seems that it's a big machlokes. Seems to be a big argument if this is kosher. We'll have to look up in Shulchan Aruch what the Shulchan Aruch says about doing this, especially because it's applicable for drinking homes.
I found what you say to be true very much, that there's people who can't hold them all together easily.
Yeah.
But also with a child often.
So what's good to know,
but when we use that word in other places in the Mishnah, it refers to things that are not done at the same time. So if you look in the Mishnah of the sacrifices and the avoda of Yom Kippur, it says this is ma'akev the other, but they're all done in a sequence, and it's not necessarily the sequence of the Mishnah literally, because there's a question about the Kohen and which thing he does to get back inside the Kodesh Kodeshim when he has to take back the coals that he left there with the smoke, etc. Mm-hmm. So this discussion of what the order is, but you have to do all the things. It doesn't matter. They certainly can't all be done at exactly
the word ma'akev. The word ma'akev doesn't always mean that it's done at the same time, but the question is, because it's one mitzvah. Here it's one mitzvah, so that would be more of a reason that it maybe needs to be done at the same time. One mitzvah. But
when we say the bracha, it's very interesting, right? Because we only say lulav.
Right.
We don't say al mitzvahs, arba minim.
So there is, and I have to find this. There is a, I don't remember where I saw this or heard this, but there is a source where someone took a lulav, shook it, said the bracha, shook it, and then realized afterwards that there were no aravos in it. So what he did afterwards was he took the aravos and he said a bracha on the aravos, al natilas arava, or aravos, and he shook the aravos. He says, I fulfilled the mitzvah now. I have to see where it's brought. Maybe it's in the Torah. Maybe it's there's somewhere where it's brought such a thing, or maybe it's a later. Maybe it's from a later sefer. But there is such a such a source. Anyway, but we'll have to look in Shulchan Aruch what it's brought down, because this is something that could be applicable in certain scenarios. Anyway, so that's the
Rabbi.
Yes, David.
If I can share the screen, here's the Shulchan Aruch, what it says.
Oh, okay.
You see that?
Yeah. Failure to take each of the species prevents fulfillment of the mitzvah with the others. Failure to take the four species prevents fulfillment of the mitzvah as per the Brisa and the Gemara and Tractate Menachos. If one of the species is missing, one does not recite a blessing over the others. However, one should take the other ones to commemorate the mitzvah, both on the first day as well as the other days. Okay, that we've seen before. That's not what we're learning now. If one has all four species and takes them individually and not together, he fulfills his obligation as long as they are all in front of him at the time. That's the Ramah based on the Rambam. In that case, one takes the lulav first, recites the bracha over it. If he interrupts by speaking between taking the species, he must recite a bracha over each. So that's the story, that if someone interrupted, he would have to say a bracha on the others, but as long as they're all in front of him. So that's the emphasis here. I have to be in front of him. Okay, thank you. Shulchan Aruch 651. Okay, so now we've gone over this statement of Rabbi Eliezer that you don't have to tie the esrog with them, and the reason for that is because it doesn't have a vav. And we also learned that you need all four, and if you don't have all four, you don't fulfill the mitzvah. You can't say a bracha. We did learn before that if you were missing one, you would still take the others, in order not to forget the laws of the Torah's lulav, the rules of lulav, and that's what mentions here. But that was really a different Gemara, that you would still do that. You would still take them. Now, Rabbi Yishmael, now comes the question that the Gemara asks on Rabbi Yishmael, and it says, what does he hold? If he holds this way, it doesn't work. If he holds that way, it doesn't work. If he holds that you need complete ones, he doesn't have complete ones. He says even if two are broken, it's kosher. And if he holds you need complete one, if he holds you need complete ones, right, then why does he say even if two are broken, it's kosher? If he holds you don't need complete ones, why does he need one that's complete? So the Bira says in the name of Rabami that he retracted. Now, what did he retract? So the way Rashi learned, and that's the way we learned yesterday, was that he retracted from what he retracted from was that instead of needing three, you need one that's complete. One has to be kosher, one uncut, unclipped, and that is the way Rashi learned it. What does he say? He says, he holds you need to have hadar, so therefore one is kosher. So the question really is, well, there are other opinions, and there's a question of the question is, what happens with the other two? Does he hold that you better to have the other two also? In other words, you need one, and it's machshir, it's kosher with that one is the main one, machshir b'chad, and but could be that he really holds you need two, because you ultimately need to have three, but they don't have to be hadar. And so there's different interpretations how to learn over here. First, he said you need three, and they all have to be complete. Then he changed his mind and said, no, it's enough with one kosher one. And the other two, even if they're broken, it's fine. What does that mean? If you don't want to take them, you don't have to. But if they're there, they're okay. You don't lose anything from having them. Now, the other interpretations are on this statement of Rabbi Shmuel that he retracted. There must be about three ways of learning this, and when it says Chazar by Rabbi Shmuel, so Rashi says that instead of needing three, that you need three, even one that's not cut is fine. And when he said even two that are cut, one not cut, what he meant to say was that you could bring two that are cut, or you don't have to bring them at all. In other words, the way the commentaries seem to understand Rashi is that Rabbi Yishmael's statement in the Mishnah is not that he retracted from saying you need three. Two could be cut, one can't. No, I changed my mind. No, now all you need is one. No. That's not the meaning. It's that initially he said you need three kosher ones. And then he changed his mind and says, no, all you need is one kosher one. The other two could be, you don't need them, you have them. Either way, we don't care about them. They're cut, they're not cut, they're clipped. So that's what the Mishnah is saying. That Rabbi Shmuel changed his mind and he said to you, that the Hadassim, when he said, what does he say? Even if two of them are cut, one of them is not cut is good enough. That's what. In other words, this statement in the Mishnah is after he already retracted. Not that he retracted from his statement in the Mishnah. This statement in the Mishnah is after he retracted. This is his words. That his initial words was that you needed to have three kosher ones, and he retracted. That's what. So that's a little different than the simple way of reading it. You probably would learn it the simple way. I'm sure the Daf Yomi, they probably learn it like the. But this is the understanding that really he retracted from something that he said earlier, and then you have a few other interpretations that he said you need three that aren't that are kosher, and according to the final understanding is that you still need three. But one can't be, one has to be kosher, fully kosher. That's another interpretation. And then you have another interpretation that that you need three that are 100% kosher. And then you have, of course, the Ravid that we had mentioned earlier, that he's talking about the stems, not the stems, the branches, the twigs that branch off, and that's what he's referring to. And he says, even if all of them are cut off, it's still kosher. But he says you would need one that's not cut off. So in other words, even if kulam ketumim aksherim, but you need one that shouldn't be katum, because of hidur mitzvah. So in other words, the law of aravos, hadassim would be fine. But mitzad hidur mitzvah, hadar, you need to have one. Commentaries aren't so happy with his interpretation, but that's the way the Ravid seems to learn it. Okay, we're going to stop here. Sei gesund, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.